Hello and welcome to the Weshtern Philosophy Podcast. Two friends with oceans and oceans discussing the unseen forces in our lives through the lens of music, mystery and crack. This week, Anthony and Bart discussed the topic of rest and how tricky that concept can be for the both of them.
For a long time, the Sabbath, like the day of rest, was like literally sacrosanct. People from my grandparents' time, sometimes they wouldn't get out of bed on a Sunday until 3 p.m, you know? And that's 1/7 of your week was spent in committed rest. Yeah, I don't think it's a perfect solution, but I think it's indicative of the fact that we used to be a society that valued rest. And now I don't know if we do so much anymore. I guess I start, do I?
Yes, clearly.
Yeah.
I was like a deer in the headlights. I was like, I need to say something. Would I say good morning?
Yeah.
What are my options?
Yeah.
Right.
And that was funny because I was like, does one of us start this? And then I was like, is it usually me? And I was like,
It is actually usually,
it is usually
you,
me.
but
And
I wanted to do
that.
it, but I was just like, also you kind of, on one of the last episodes, you kind of did me dirty when I said, how are you doing? And you're like, oh, are we going to pretend to be interested in each other now? And I was like, so now it's gone.
Yeah,
Tension.
I once bitten, twice shy. I've ruined it. I've ruined Bart's ability to say
So
good morning.
I'm not going to be good on any of the podcasts for the first 5 minutes. And also, the stinger from the last time, well, it's not going to be the last time, but from the ego episode, I just sounded like Deepak Chopra, so I'm not going to reach those levels again either.
Oh, I like it. We need to create a little bit of drama between us, like some artificial friction. So this is where I'm decided to put it up top for some reason. But
yeah, we are a bit too harmonious. I was swearing at you on WhatsApp this morning, and I think it's for the same reason. Just like, let's create a bit of drama.
I got completely. This is a boring story, but I completely misread a message that you sent me, and I sent back something that actually ended up sounding quite cruel, and you just texted back, "You absolute bastard!" And I got all upset. I was like, "What's going on? What did I do?"
Isn't it funny with messages though? A friend of mine sent me this is going to be terrible. I'm just going to do it anyway. A friend of mine sent a picture of their lovely 2-month-old baby. There's a gorgeous girl and she's lovely, but the whole family has brown eyes, and she seems to have blue eyes. But I know that can change in kids. Like they can kind of seem dark blue, and then it might end up, but it looks like it's brightening up. And I kind of wanted to say in my airy fairy spiritual way, like I said something like, "Asher, that's Uncle Bart's doing," meaning yes, well you got it, meaning. Oh, it's just, the love I have for your family, for this child, it'll be transmuted into the icon. Something ridiculous and narcissistic like that. But it came across sounded like I was the fucking milkman from Father Ted. So I was like, oh shit. But that can be kind of fun as well. Yeah. Like, it's fun with good friends. It's terrible with people you don't know very well.
Humor is funny. But myself and Katie put up a post about
humor is funny.
Humor is funny. People come here for the deep thoughts, Bart.
This is Anthony O'Connor.
We're a bit slow starting today, and the topic will show maybe a little bit why that is. But myself and Katie put up a text about our text. A text, Jesus Christ! We wrote a text.
Granddad wrote a text on the town hall.
We nailed a notice to the door of the church about our engagement, and everyone's like, "Congratulations, so happy for you." And my buddy Cliff wrote, "You didn't know," but my buddy Cliff, it was noted. My buddy Cliff wrote saying, "Well, yeah, I see how you benefit, but does she know how much of a lazy turd you are? Congratulations to you both." And then a second comment replied to his own comment, which is just blank. Which
That's the real problem now. The blank comment. That's where
I know.
Yeah.
Cliff, I love you. That's brilliant.
Most of Anthony's friends seem to be this way. Because your friend Larry also gave us a lovely podcast review. Yeah. I don't know if he wants to hear this, but he's on it now.
Yeah.
Where he just listened to, like, you could hear me.
He was watching it on YouTube.
Yeah, that was so funny. It's such an old man thing as well. Sorry, Larry, but it was like filming on his telly. Well, getting YouTube on the telly now, that's not an old man thing, but filming Anthony's ear while I was going on about how great he was, or not how great he was, but in the first episode, I'm kind of saying you're a nice man and all that, stuff that I deeply regret now. And he just go, he's also a cunt. It killed me. It was so funny.
It's the funniest thing, and like I desperately want to put it up on our socials, but I just don't.
Check in with him. I think he's visiting today.
He is. He's arriving in a few hours, actually.
Yeah.
If he was earlier, you could have been on the pod, Lar, but you missed it. You missed your chance.
And I don't think he won't listen to this for a few months at least, so you'll be okay.
Yeah, I'll play it in the car while I'm driving him around.
It's a good idea.
So, today's topic is rest. And it's a funny one because I'm on my second cup of coffee, which is unusual for me. But I had a week this week where work was not that busy. So naturally, being self-employed, when you have a quiet week, you rest, you relax, you recuperate. Bart's looking funny because you don't do that. You just panic immediately.
Yeah, I thought that was universal because most of the things we share, I just thought you were going to go. So first of all, I thought you were actually setting it up as a joke, and then you went genuine, and I was like, "Fuck this!"
Yeah.
No. First, you panic.
Yeah.
I will explain how to do it.
Yeah.
First, you go for the first. No, actually, the first day you go fine, lovely. Bit of time, I can get some jobs done.
Yeah, I'll really engage
then
in my meditation practice.
All of my clients have deserted me and have found out they don't want to work with me anymore. Even though in my case, and I think in your case as well, they're spread across the world.
Yep.
But
they've all en masse decided we're a bad
person. They're in a WhatsApp
person.
group and they're like, this guy, fucking shite. We're not working with him anymore. So, and then you get into that for a couple of days and then you go, well, then maybe you can go to where you were going.
Well, no, I didn't get there. Like, it's just, it would make complete sense. Like, sure, that's the point of being self-employed is that it's feast or famine. And when you're a bit quiet, you should be taking care of yourself and resting and maybe clearing your backlog and stuff. But I realized how difficult I find it to rest. I find it really, really, really difficult to rest. And that's something I'd love to chat to you about, Bart. It wasn't always this way. Like, I remember what it feels like to rest and like have nothing on the next day and not be stressed about anything in particular. Or if anything was a bit of a big deal, probably like undergrad essay deadlines or something like that. All very manageable. Nothing that like grabs you in the gut and just being able to go, I'm going to take a few hours. I'm going to binge a series. I'm going to hang out. I'm going to go for a walk. And while on the surface, I'm still doing all those things. Well, not so much series binging, but like, I feel like there's 20% of myself that has to be in readiness and in awareness. So like 80% of me can rest, but that last 20% is still like awake and alert and waiting for action. Can you relate to that, Bart?
Oh, 100%. I'm just thinking about it now because we decided on this topic fairly last minute. Not that we usually read up, as you can probably tell from the content we provide or produce. But I'm just kind of going through it in my head only just now at the moment. And I think there's probably two dimensions to it, because I do think we're fairly similar in this. I think it's on the one hand, it just makes complete sense because so often we will be taking care of business in whatever way that is. Like, we both have families. You guys have Blarney, I have kids. We live in houses that need, to get sorted all of the time because we live in Ireland. Yeah. And there's usually a lot on.
Yeah.
We've smartphones.
Yes,
so we quite often will get this kind of thing of like, bing, your attention is needed right now. Or, and it does feel that way because even when you have the chill time, and then especially if you're me and you do still, I'm honestly, I am getting better at letting go of that thing of like, oh my God, they've all found out I'm shit. But still, if a job comes in on a quiet day, I will still be like, okay, respond to that now. We need to get that one booked, So there is that thing then of like, tell them now, or you're not going to have that work. So in that way, it completely makes sense that it needs to happen. And then I think on a second level, it also has something to do with role, I suppose, where we both have. If I may, and you can please do counter this because, like you said, we need a bit of drama. But I do think we both have a role of giver and minder of people and things. That's not very well expressed, but do you know what I mean? Like there is a kind of role of like, okay, I am the person who takes care of business. Not to say that your partner or people around you aren't. I'm not saying that, but there is that probably learned role of like always having to be a bit on the lookout if anyone needs a hand.
Yeah.
In your case, especially, like you're fucking dealing with people's mental and physical health all the time as a practitioner. So it makes complete sense that you're on the lookout.
Well, Katie said something very interesting to me, which I'm still chewing on. But like when I was like quiet this week, I was edgy, you know? And she was like, she's like, I think you're so used to like focusing on external problems that now that you have the time to look inwards at yourself, you don't know how to do it or don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, could you take your perception and get out? Well, no, there's definitely something to that. And like, I don't know how many of those roles are assigned or are like assigned from outside or self-assigned as well, because I think there's part of us that quite likes to be the go-to person, you know?
Because it gives huge validation.
Yeah.
Like, so 100%, it's nice when people go, oh, you're good, you're reliable.
Yeah.
It's nice. Like, and there is definitely problem. Well, I'm saying it more so because I think it is a bit of a problem. But we both get off is a terrible word, but we do get something from it, you know. We don't get off on it, that's terrible.
Yeah, I know. Like,
but
there
is like there is a lot of positive reward in it, so you'd be loath to let it go. And then I do also think the longer you wear that mask, it does become you a bit as well. It's not disingenuous, I don't think so. I think we want to be good to people, but there's definitely an issue with it as well.
Yeah, and if we're either assigned through circumstances or self-assigned to be like the go-to person, then of course it's going to be a little bit difficult for us to wind down. And the reason I bring up like self-assigned is to stop us slipping into martyr mode and like to get ahead of the implication that maybe the people around us are helpless, which they absolutely aren't, you know? Like
no, definitely not. And I hate it when people do the martyr thing.
Yeah.
Probably I found this out, like, usually when I find that really annoying, it's because I do it.
Yeah.
And I it's really not nice to do that. Like, oh, I'm so, look at me. Me and Yvonne have really tried to, we have a bit of that instilled by ourselves or the universe or our families or whoever, but there is a bit of that. And it really comes out in parenting where you're like, there's quite often there will be, you know, when the kids aren't behaving a certain way and you go, I have been really working hard today and I just want you to do it. And then we caught ourselves and we're like, oh, that isn't good. That's not good.
Well, it's a bit of guilt mongering, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And when you see it, finally you go, oh, shit. And then when you don't do it, they respond so much better, obviously. Of course, because we hate having guilt being put on us.
Yeah.
I'm getting a bit off topic, but it's all...
Yeah.
Just wanted to say I 100% agree with you that there needs to be ownership.
Yeah.
Especially at this point in life. Like, when you see a kid who's 15 and you're I think it's probably good to go, you need to kind of realize where you're coming from a little bit and what's been put on you that isn't you. But then at this age, you have to go, yeah, well, why are you still doing it? You are an adult.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, we all have work to do.
Yeah. But coming back to the... No, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, go on.
Yeah. No, but we're coming back to the rest thing before we go all the way completely. I had the family were recently away, and I was talking to you about this, that I had quite a hard time relaxing. Just even just waking up in the middle of the night, sort of being ready for someone to kind of need me or something. And then I usually, nearly to assuage my conscience, I still do a lot of work when I'm on my own, even though it would be a great time to actually go, hey, let's do the things that I usually a bit trickier to go. Like, I can't go to the pub all the time when you've young kids, so maybe you should go to the pub once or twice that week that they're away. But I was just like, no, we'll do a bit of work, and if there's time left over, we'll squeeze in something nice. It's strange.
It is strange. And I did something similar. I did a treatment yesterday, a craniosacral treatment, and then I got home around 5:30, which is late, from it. And CST wipes you out, and most of these bodywork treatments you get more from them if you rest afterwards. But Katie was out for the evening, and I had to stop myself scrubbing every single part of the house. And I did do a few jobs. I tidied the kitchen and the guest room, and I'm just like, a bit like you. I was like, I should be doing the things that I do when I'm on my own, because Katie's not around. So I'll do these like practices, whatever they are, that help me wind down. And no, instead I was like, you have to work. You have to get this done before she gets back. That's not coming from her. Like, that's not coming from Katie at all.
No, and it's also the thing you said to me when I was dealing with this. It's kind of like, how do you then relax without dissociating?
Yes.
Because that's quite often, I really remember this as a student. Like when I was a student back in the Netherlands, I used to work a lot in a pub to kind of make ends meet. Also because it was a really fun environment to work. But it would always be late nights and a bit of drink involved, and then lectures early the next morning or whatever. But I still had loads of free time. But I would just come home and put on the PlayStation or the Xbox, and it was an Xbox then, and just do that. And it felt really nice. But now I do kind of go like, is there not better ways to be, instead of getting more stimulus from that screen? But then again, it's always about a balance, because then the other part is then I judge myself for that. Whereas actually sometimes it's probably fine to dissociate for a bit and just chill out that way, as long as it's not the only way you're doing it.
Yeah, I think they have different purposes. And that word dissociation is from a meme Katie sent me, which is like, are you actually resting, or are you just sitting looking at your phone and dissociating? And I like you said, judgment is a big part of dissociating. Yeah. Because what can happen then is you're like, I can't look at my phone. I can't watch reality TV. I can't do these like mindless things. And then it becomes, I must be learning Latin or exercising or learning how to like make a canoe out of a giant redwood or something.
This is it. I usually go to, okay, so the phone is away. I like playing the guitar. I need to write a song.
Yes.
Which is...
I need to practice that for the... Yeah.
Which is so stupid, because it's like, actually, I think our CST guy said this as well. What is the different brain states you can get into? It's like the alpha, beta...
Is it gamma? Alpha, beta, theta, gamma?
I'm not sure. Well, there's one of those ones. One of the ones we're in. I think it's probably theta, where you go into that creative mode.
Sure.
And you actually make yourself kind of receptive to...
flow
state, and you suddenly write stuff down. But he said to me, like, it's not a heap of crack. like it's beautiful, and it brings beautiful fruits.
Yeah.
And it can be a very interesting state to be in, and it can definitely be cathartic as well. But it's also nice to look at motorcycles or whatever, you know. And so... Well, I will hoist my spiritual fucking underwear to the mast. Yeah. That's probably not an expression.
Yeah.
What's the expression?
I'd be amazed if it was an expression.
There's something you can
nail my colours to the mast.
Colours to the mast. Thank you.
I will hoist my spiritual underwear to the mast. I think we have a new tagline for the podcast.
Boom. There's this one, tangent, before I get back to my extra large underwear. No, I've lost it. Fuck no, I'm gonna get there. Oh yeah, I'm gone again. What's going on? There was a tangent upon a tangent. Second and third thoughts.
I wish you could see his face right now.
I'm so confused. It's fine. It's all staying in. Don't worry about editing it, Anthony.
Oh, I would never.
No, he's enjoying this. You should see his face. This would be a good face. It has a bit of a Wolverine quality.
Yeah.
It's nearly like the incisors are lengthened. He's like, oh.
And you look terrified. You look like there's like a person hanging off a bridge. Like you're literally reaching your arm out.
Oh, he doesn't realize that yes, I am reaching my arm out. He doesn't realize that the laptop is going through the window very soon to destroy all content. I think the first tangent in my head was that I was reading to Yvonne. Sometimes we do this for bed. It's just really nice way to wind down is to get into a nice story. And
you read out loud to each other?
Yeah, so I usually read to her because she can't read. It's very sad. No, because you know, I'm a performative ape, so I like I like doing a bit of that stuff, and she loves listening to it and kind of falling asleep. So usually we do have to go back half a page or something. But I'm reading to her about the Feagles, about one of the Tiffany Aching books by Terry Pratchett. So Terry Pratchett, one of our favorite authors, and he has some really nice young adult books, and I think it's kind of perfect because they don't have that darkness. Like, there's still actually a bit of darkness. I wouldn't read them too soon now to my daughter, who is the eldest of my children, but it's like it's nice for us to because it's still colorful and actually insightful, but it's a bit less grimy than maybe the adult books could be. But I was just thinking of jeez, this is such a ridiculous tangent. I am floundering. This is about a girl who wants to become a witch, and she's awesome, but she is helped out by the little pixies, which are like basically kind of Picts, as in the tribes
I
from.
didn't get that they're pixies.
Yeah, from the like
the Celts and the Picts.
How would you say that? The Celts and the Picts, yeah. And so they're like little tattooed men who are like hand high, and they're they're just hilarious, and they're always fighting, and they're very courageous and a bit silly, and it's really fun. But one of them is like an aviator, and he uses underwear to parachute down. Now that was a very long setup with no reward. I'm really floundering here, Anthony. I'm really sorry.
I could throw you a life raft.
Go on, please.
Throw you a life raft. Yes, I will throw you a life raft. Me and Katie read to each other.
Yeah.
As well. And this kind of brings me to come back to that in a sec, but like what I'd love to talk about, and you let me know if you think this is a good idea, but like a little bit practical, as in we can talk about how we have trouble resting, and I definitely want to, but like I'd love to know how you rest, but also how maybe we can start about how we dissociate first, because like I'd love to get into the difference between those two. But yeah, we found reading phenomenal. Like,
I just wanted to say, because I completely got lost in my own tangent, I was gonna say something about doing Reiki training. That was the underwear that was being pinned to the mast. But also, I've now forgotten why I was going to do that. So maybe we'll get back to that. But I just wanted to say that because I'm sounding like an absolute moron at the moment.
Yeah.
Please go back to the functional part of
somehow
relaxing.
You tied together like functional relaxing and underwear.
And Reiki and little blue men.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but please take over, Daddy.
We read Manchon McGann, 32 Words for Field. And we kind of take chapter by chapter. But the problem is some of those chapters are a page and a half long, and some of them are 30 pages long. So it's like every once in a while I'll be, and I always get the long ones, and I'm just like, and then it was, and then it was, and you're kind of skipping ahead, and you're like, Jesus, Manchon. But it's wonderful. And like, I think one of the reasons it's wonderful is it's done together, and it's not involving a screen. Because to go back to dissociation, a lot of the ways I dissociate would be like screen related, and they're so stupid, and I'm going to put them out there because of how stupid they are. But one of the ways I dissociate is, right, one of them is like a bit highfalutin. I love music theory videos on YouTube. I love 12 Tone, Adam Neely, people like that. So I love those. But another one is there's a game called Destiny 2, which is like by Bungie, the guys that made Halo. Yeah. And I used to play it, but I haven't played it in 5 years because it's basically a full-time job. But I still watch streamers and videos, and I have not logged into that game in probably 5 years now, but I still know what's going on. I still know what the meta is. I still know what the PvE and the PvP meta is, and I still have my content creators that I watch on it and watch the game unfold. And it's of no relevance, no benefit to any part of my life whatsoever, but it just calms me down, absolutely calms me down.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that is, but it's like just stimulating enough that like I'm not losing interest, but also maybe the point of it is that it has no actual functional benefit.
That could definitely be the case. For me, the shameful part is that it's not even watching that one thing, but then it could be like doubling up on that, you know, kind of listening to a music theory video, which I do sometimes as well, and then playing some kind of simple game on the Nintendo Switch or something. I'm like, what's going on? It's like, it's nearly like you're plugging every part of yourself in to be gone for a bit or something. Whereas I'm really happy that I want to say that as well, to kind of nearly defend myself. Like I love going out for walks, putting the phone aside, connecting with people and whatever, but to get to that point where I can just sit down and just look out the window, it really takes a while. And this was your advice as well the last time when I was having trouble switching off. You're kind of like, it takes a while. And that's the funny thing. Actually, usually I find it really has a lot to do with taking judgment away.
Right.
If you go, okay, I am, but sometimes I'm nearly afraid that I'm turning it into some kind of a sad story, and only then it's okay. It's like, well, you have had a busy time, so it's okay for you to relax, or you are dealing with something difficult. It's okay. I'm kind of like, wouldn't it just have to be okay anyway? But I'm not there yet. So what I kind of noticed is when I go, it's okay, it's fine. You're dealing with it. Give yourself a bit of space.
Isn't it funny that you do need to, what is that? Give yourself permission. You almost need to have earned the rest.
Yeah.
Would you say that's right?
Yeah. Yeah, but then I do think that I do enough to merit it. But it's nearly like you're also qualifying the rest. Yeah. Like you said, you're like, I'm watching streaming videos of Destiny 2. I'm like, you're nearly, you're like, that's so silly.
Yeah.
I'm watching other people play a game. And when I say it like that, you could go, it is silly, but fucking fine. Yeah. Jesus, you do a lot for people, and you mind yourself, and you are actually introspective as well, regardless of what you just said about having a hard time then moving in. I actually think you look inward a lot of the time. So it's like, this is your downtime, fine. But I'm the same. I'm like, what a weird thing to do,
Yeah. And like right now as we're talking, Blarney is snoring on the couch. And I wonder, could we need to mic him up sometime, man? Just have it as like ambient background.
If we ever do get a Patreon, it would be such a good, like, just chill. Just a video of Blarney breathing and then the sound and just going.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like, I love that. Like, dogs and babies have this, and I suppose cats too, where they're just like, nothing's happening. I'm completely comfortable.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen to me. Off I go, completely asleep.
Yeah, and it's making me think of like holidays in Italy when I was like a teenager or something, where it'd be baking hot. We always had a really nice. We used to go there with my mum and my stepdad, and I always really loved Italy. And really friendly people, wonderful food, beautiful cities, really nice. But then we caught like a really nice rhythm as well, which would be in the morning, have breakfast, get up and go and view some town or something, just have a look in or go to a museum or whatever before it gets too hot. Then when it gets too hot, go to the beach or to the pool, just lay there, read a book, sleep. Jeez, it was ridiculous, like the amount of sleep I was getting as a teenager. I remember my mum at some point going, "You're sleeping too much." Like, it makes sense that you're having loads of nightmares at night because you're sleeping too much, you're doing too much or whatever. No, I wasn't having that many, but you know what I mean. But and then in the evenings when it cooled down again, we would all shower, dress up, and go for a nice meal in a beautiful old fortified town. Like, all very, very nice and dandy, and it sounds very.
It's gorgeous.
It sounds very spoiled as well, but we did.
No, that's what a holiday's meant to be.
I think we did 2 or 3 of those, and when you were talking about Blarney chilling out, I can just kind of see myself by a beautiful pool, just baking in the sun, reading The Lord of the Rings in the shade. I actually read The Lord of the Rings for the first time in one of those trips, and it's funny when we say Lord of the Rings, you just feel.
Yeah.
so much needs to be said.
There's-
we will have to
yeah.
get it out of the way at some point.
We just
talk
need
about
to
those
do,
stories
like,
for
yeah.
7 hours, and
Yeah.
then we won't have to bother our poor listeners with it anymore. But then I'm thinking, so I needed that completely contained, idyllic circumstance to completely relax.
Yeah, you were removed from, I don't know your situation, but like maybe some stressful circumstances or some like obligations back, home. The other thing there though is routine. And I think routine can be really beneficial to rest.
That's
When
a very
you're
good
like,
point.
I know when I'm going to eat. I know when we're going to do this in the morning, this in the afternoon. This, like, so in the afternoon, that's my rest time,
This is such a good point because actually I love routine if it's a positive one. But I've noticed that really with, like, for instance, me and my wife Yvonne, we always have date night on Fridays because it gets so busy with kids that you just need to make sure you get your quality time in. Now, luckily, we get more quality time than that, but it's kind of a safeguard when it's super busy to go, Friday nights, we've dinner together. I can't be booking gigs because, there's a lot of gigs on a Friday and a Saturday. So it's kind of important for that reason as well to have it in the diary. And I only have a gig every so often if there's something big, a wedding or whatever. But then the anticipation is lovely. The whole of Friday, you're kind of going like, oh, great.
You can maybe push a bit harder because...
Yeah. You're kind of like, you're working and the work is done. Close the computer, put down the guitar, whatever you're doing, and put down those needles, and you kind of go, oh, lovely. We'll have a bit of wine. We'll have a bit of food. We'll have long chats for a couple of hours. The phones are away. We might have a bit of music on in the background. Lovely. And but I noticed it with different things as well. Like I used to play squash with a friend of mine a certain day a week, every week as well, and it was lovely. I was like, oh, nice. It's Thursday. There we go.
Yep.
So I think I really benefit from that kind of routine because, like you said, the freelance work can be very up and down and very different, and just like, and then the opposite of that is true as well. Like I love the fact around here that you can always meet up with people at the spur of the moment. You can be like, hey, Anthony, what are you doing today?
Yep.
I don't have a lot on. And you're like, oh, I don't have a lot on either. Oh, great. Let's go for coffee. Let's do.
Yeah.
I like that because
Which we did on Tuesday, yeah.
We did. And it's much nicer than what happens sometimes in the Netherlands where you have to book in for weeks in advance and you don't know what you're feeling like when that day comes. But 100% routine,
Yeah, and it's funny. I think that's partially what caught me last week is that my free time was not. It was what's that Weird Al Yankovic album, Mandatory Fun. It wasn't scheduled free time.
Yeah.
I was like the way what I've learned helps with my like just management of stress and productivity is that I have certain, because I do a few different things, I've started to compartmentalize them. So like all my Chinese medicine work happens on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Podcasts usually happen Wednesday and then Friday, and emails, like Monday morning is my email day, so like that helps. But then when like rest time creeps into the Tuesdays and Thursdays, which in my head were for something else, I find it hard, And the other thing about modern life, and I think you have this as well, is like we have visitors coming this weekend. I can't wait. But also when you can lose your weekends, Yeah. And if we're talking about the routine of rest, for a long time, the Sabbath, like the day of rest, was like literally sacrosanct. Like I have people from my grandparents' time, sometimes they wouldn't get out of bed on a Sunday until 3 p.m., and that's 1/7 of your week was spent in committed rest. Like, I don't know about you, but like on my first day off, there's so many little bits to do that like the second day you can really actually start to rest a bit. But even then that can get swept up if you have...
Yeah, and it's strange as well how it quantitatively works out, because you notice that, like, that expression where they go, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. Like, it's interesting as well that we can have very different lives, but we can still find a good balance. Like, because that idea of the Sabbath, for instance, like when people get upset that shops are open on Sunday or whatever, I'm kind of like, I'm all for freedom, you know. So I'm like, if that works out for most people involved, great. You don't have to go to those shops, you know. Like obviously, it's a shame if it pushes workers into giving up their Sabbath, but sure, that's a different discussion about their boundaries then. But it's like like I said, I'm all for freedom. Do it your way. But there is definitely something about a kind of slightly mandatory aspect of it then as well. And we all notice it with Christmas when the shops close. And it's funny how it then turns into a panic as well, where everyone buys more food than they could eat in a week because the shops are closed 2 days or something, or is it 2.5 probably here in Ireland. But and I don't think even all of them do. I think Super Value and Ennis Diamond stays open. But I was thinking about that different balance because I remember before I had kids, I just worked 40 hours a week and I didn't have that much else to do. But at the end of the week, I was like, oh, I'm tired now. Time to, you know. And now I do so much more, and level of tiredness is probably similar. Like my sleep has definitely got a bit worse with kids waking up in the night and all that. But it's interesting that it's not a simple sum. It's not like, oh, everyone needs the Sunday off and then we're all grand. It's different that way.
Yeah, I don't think it's a perfect solution, but I think it's indicative of the fact that we used to be a society that valued rest. And now I don't know if we do so much anymore.
Yes, because also it's become like a thing to be proud of, nearly in a weird way. I'm so busy.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez, I'm so busy.
Yeah, don't have a moment. You know, I haven't had a day off. And
I've done it, don't get me wrong. I've
We all
100%
have.
done it. But actually, I'm starting to, in a way now, when people say that, go, well, you should.
Yeah.
And I should, too.
Yeah.
You know.
I used to work on cruise ships. My first contract, I worked, a full day's work was 14 hours, a half day's work was 7 hours. I worked every day.
That's insane.
For 6 or 7 months.
That's insane.
I didn't have a day off in more than half a year, you know? Now it's 26, 27.
Yeah, but the fact that you survived that is insane.
I know.
That's so much work.
But the funny thing is, like, there's two ways to look at that. There's one way that's like, you can do it. Do it again. You're so productive, you know? Look what you're able for. And then there's, like, the part of me now, 10 years on, that's like, I never want to do that again.
Yeah.
I know I can. I've done it. I never want to do it again, you know?
But it's interesting that energy, that was, I suppose what I was trying to say, not necessarily for or against the Sundays off, but more like energy works in not mysterious way, well, also in mysterious ways. There's the Reiki again that I was going to get into. I'm still really curious what my point was actually going to be, but I'll figure it out afterwards and I'll slot it in because it make me sound like less of a fucking Egypt. But energy works so interestingly. Like when I worked in the much mentioned pub as a student in Nijmegen, the city I was working in, they always have a big summer festival around the 4-day march. It's like the biggest walking event, hiking event in the world, I think, or one of them anyway. And it started after the First World War, and it was usually just like soldiers walking, I think, 50 kilometers a day for 4 days, something like that, with full gear on and backpacks and all that. And now there's different distances. My wife Yvonne did the 40K one time, so that's 160 kilometers of walking in 4 days. You know, it's impressive stuff, but it's great crack. It's a big festival. It's really good vibes. But then kind of a whole going out kind of scene has spread around it. And people will go on the tear and they'll see off the walkers in the morning at 3 and then they'll go to bed and there's loads of music and stuff. But in the pub, that would be super busy. They'd make like 3 months worth of money in those 5 days that around that time, you know, or that week around that time. But then we would work insane hours as well, all through the night, you know, just every day, nearly like you, you know, like you on those ships, but only for well, actually, I think it was usually 10 days kind of surrounding it. But it was great because there was great camaraderie and it was exciting. It was kind of an adventure. There was kind of a sense of like, right, we're going into the trenches together and there's going to be loads of weirdness going on and drunk people and fights and great crack and music and stories and dancing. And that gave us all enough energy to pull through then, you know, and you'd be excited for it. And then afterwards, you definitely need your rest. But isn't it interesting sometimes where energy comes from? It's like sometimes when I remember this especially as a student, like sometimes you'd have a few drinks and the next day you'd be like, oh God, I feel god awful. And then sometimes I'd have a heap of drinks and I'd wake up laughing.
Yeah.
Just be like, geez, that was great crack.
Yeah.
And now I'm just gonna go out into the sunshine or go for a dip and fine,
Yeah, I think it's the yin and the yang, and like definitely I think I've talked about this before, but there's this idea of heart yang and kidney yang. So kidney yang is the big fire, and it lives in your kidneys, and it's like adrenaline, and it's gives your body mobile force, and you can think of it as being like the army, right, that goes around and carries out work. And then heart fire is your conscious mind and your joy, and it's a very small flame, but it's very bright, and we call it the emperor fire, and actually the ministerial fire is the kidney fire. So it's like the emperor gives the orders, and the ministers, the army, carry them out. So the army is much bigger than the emperor, but they need that guidance of the emperor fire. And I think people focus too much on like just work for the sake of work, and that depletes the ministerial fire. But if you're doing something joyful, like if you're hanging out with mates or buzzing off something, the energy will come because the pilot light is strong, But if the pilot light isn't there, if the emperor fire isn't there, then things start to diminish very quickly.
Nice.
So
I like the pilot light. That's a good image. Yeah.
But and the thing is, yang generates yin. Like if you work really, really, really hard in a kind of a wholesome kind of way, and then have a good quality rest after it, that's going to be more beneficial. That'll generate more yin, more stillness, more resilience than if you just chilled out. Yeah. But the problem is, it's like inhalation, exhalation. It's contraction and release. And I don't think we do enough inhalation. I don't think the yin and the yang are balanced. I think we're like when I was on the ships, it was all about facilitating more yang. So like my meals were taken care of, my laundry was taken care of, like all this stuff. I had none of these day-to-day things. I just had to focus on work, and a big culture of alcohol and coffee and like extroversion and just being big and visible and looking really good and all this stuff. And when you're in your 20s, that's great, because you have a lot of resources, like you haven't been worn down by life yet, but it's not sustainable, and that's where, like, I remember just life is different now. We can always be contacted, we can always be distracted, we can always be productive. But I remember when I was in university, I'd get the train from Tralee to Cork, and there'd be a changeover in Mallow, and you'd have to wait 25 minutes for the Cork train. And I used to just sit on the platform and do nothing. Sometimes I had music, sometimes I had a book, sometimes I was playing Snake on my phone. But like a lot of the time, I just sat on a bench and just did nothing for 25 minutes. I never do that now.
No.
And like that was, a couple of times a week. Every time I went to get a bus, anytime, Yeah.
You even see it like when you and I have lunch, which is always a very joyful affair, or for me anyway. But like the phones will be on the table, and we're both, I think, good at turning them around, putting them away. But then it's like at the beginning or the end of it, we'll probably both still be working away on a message. And then we do set it aside like, hey, you're my priority. We're going to have, like, which is great, because I don't like it when people are constantly distracted and kind of basically saying, hey, this little gadget is more important, or people that are not here are more important than you are. So I value that we both do that, but it does show that it's a little window, in our life that is defined by that. Yeah. To some degree. But then on the other hand, though, like what you were just saying there about taking the train and sitting in the station, I do think that the first opportunity that arose to distract myself, I did take it. Like I would, it was funny, I was doing a play recently and I was talking to a guy he was only 13 or something. He was very tall, so he looked very mature, but he was 13 or something. I said, oh yeah, I used to have my MP3 player. And that just completely passed him by, because there is he knew what a Walkman was, because there was some kind of nostalgia porn about that on Instagram or whatever. But so he knew what that was, but he was like, MP3 player, because that was only a couple of years, it was like a little USB stick with a jack for your headphones in it. I never went anywhere without that.
Yeah.
So I do think there was something in me that was desperate to get that dissociation. And I love music as well. Like, it's not just dissociation, because I also, for instance, I loved sitting in the back of the car with my parents and looking out the window and listening to music, something like that, which was really joyous. But I do think just being with yourself, it's hard for a lot of people.
The music's a funny one, because I think music can sometimes be the way that I find the way I find the way into the moment. Like, I can find that, like, if I'm like a little bit, say I'm sat there and I'm a little bit uneasy or unsettled, like, I'll go to a playlist, or I'll make a playlist, and I'll skim, and I'm like, that's either the mood I'm feeling or the solution for the mood I'm feeling. You know, so sometimes it's like, that song is just perfect, like Medicine by Youth or something like that, and you're like, oh, that is it, that's what I'm feeling, and I can really sit there and feel it, and I'm very present, you know, and I wouldn't consider that dissociation. No. Or then sometimes I'm like, I'll put on System of a Down, just blast it out, and that at least gets things moving, and that's quite good too, you know. So at least for me, I wouldn't consider listening to music dissociation.
No, maybe not. But I think the fact that I would always feel like nearly like a crutch, like, I need to have that. Okay. I need to have something in my ears.
Sure.
Either a story. I would also have audiobooks on there, like a story or music. It's like, I can't just be with the silence. I'm actually getting better at it now, and I think meditation is a great help for this. Where you do learn to sit still. And it was funny that the Chinese medicine practitioner I go to in the Netherlands, he would go to at one point he was like, okay, just empty your mind, and I did it, and he was like, oh, I didn't expect that. I was like, yeah, I've been doing a bit of meditation, so it's not all bad. But I think my main hurdle is to get rid of the judgment. Just go, life is, life can be tricky enough. Be kind to yourself as well. Yeah. But also, it's a bit like the example with the cookie that I think we talked about before. Instead of just horsing all the cookies into you, kind of going, oh, hello, I see there is you want that cookie. Well, why do you want that cookie? You can have it in a minute, but let's just sit with this for a moment. I think that's what I try to do now. Or I just, when I'm home alone, I just go, put away the phone, put everything away, just sit down for a bit, look out the window. I do it, but it's funny how much of an effort it is. And I do feel that there is some kind of grasping at the external world, looking for something that probably could be found internally.
Yes.
Is the judgment as big for you as well, or is it more just that you're in that mode of going? What do you think your main obstacle is?
I think you're more in touch with it than I am. I wouldn't call it judgment, but I don't think it's because it's not there. I think it's because, like, look, my parents are self-employed. My father's self-employed. I'm used to seeing him work 60, 70-hour weeks, manual labor. And I'm just being like, oh yeah, that's what that is. That's what that looks like, and living in like a farming community as well, like, people work hard in farming communities, like, and you're
never off.
You're never off.
Like what
you're
you were saying,
never off
yourself.
As a farmer,
Like, they can have times where it's quieter, but they always have to be ready for when the rain stops or the rain comes or the calving starts. Or
and look, that's my lineage. Like, there's no quick overcoming that. The value of a man for a long time was how long he could work the land until he dropped. Like, that's, and those lads are out there. People. We were talking earlier this week about a man 86 years old, and he still clears the scrub from his fields by hand. Like, that's not an exaggeration. Like, he's actually out there, Blarney's snoring has kicked off. He's having a dream now. But I think it's just that. We've talked about the word endurism before, that Irish people definitely have a lot of. Maybe Dutch people have it too, but this idea of just keep at it, just keep going now, a little bit more. Okay, that has to be done, that has to be done, that has to be done. Sure, that's the way it is. And that's something I often bring up with my clients or my patients, where I'm like, sure, I don't want to do it, but I have to. So what can you do? And you're like, you're focusing an awful lot on the second half of that sentence. And it's true. Sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do. But like focus a little bit on the first part and like how much you don't want to do it, you know? Like just acknowledge that. Like you with the cookie. Acknowledge the bit of you that's like, I really don't want to have to get up and drink 3 cups of coffee and give a presentation and then drive 2 hours to Waterford and then, you know, whatever it is that you have to do, just acknowledge. You're like, yeah, that's a bit shit, you know? But I'm doing it for now. I'm doing it to pay the mortgage. I'm doing it to see my, you know, I'm doing it to, that's fine. But I think we don't acknowledge what it costs us sometimes. And then just being tired and caffeinated and productive becomes our baseline. It's not something we are doing. Again, it's the exhalation without the inhalation. It's like there's no flip side of that coin. That's just what we do all the time now. And how do you break that cycle?
Do you also think, I'm wondering, listening to you and especially the image of the farming and stuff, it's sometimes interesting being here as a foreigner, feeling so connected with most of it, but then you see the different colors of different things, and I go, oh, that might be different. So that's what I want to ask you about. I think that in capitalism, a lot of people suffer from scarcity mindset, not even necessarily mindset, because that is like, it's the whole thing, but it's like suffer from the idea of scarcity. I think Irish people have a lot of it.
Oh yeah.
Have a lot, and have more, because like when you and I talk about ideas of scarcity that we have, I think that resonates for both of us. Like I definitely worry more about scarcity than I probably need to. But I think for Irish people, it's a very heavy millstone around the neck.
Yeah, absolutely. This is my theory, and like I've heard people get a bit annoyed with me when I say it, but we are a poor country. We are a poor country. We have always been poor. We are poor farmers, and you know we're Celts and all that, but like, you know, we haven't had any wealth to speak of for a long time. And you know, we were a colonized country, so like what wealth we did have, what resources we did have, what attributes, like our bodies, our ability to work, was exported to other countries, was exported to America, was exported to Britain to fight in the world wars, you know. Our natural resources were taken. And I'm not trying to play a martyr role here, but like that's just, we're a poor country. Like go to Germany, go to London, like go to New York. That's what wealth looks like. Grafton Street in Dublin is not, you know, we do not have the same kind of wealth here. Then we had the Celtic Tiger, where for the first time in our history, we had cash. We had it for 15 years? We didn't know what the fuck to do with it. How many stories do you know of people whose lives were ruined by the Celtic Tiger? Yeah, a fair number of people made out like bandits. The people that were already wealthy going into it, usually.
Yeah, who knew what to do with it. Yeah.
Yes, but the people that were like, and by the way, I don't blame any of these people. They were being good capitalists. They were getting capital. They were reinvesting it in things that, you know, people were telling them, this is it. And as Irish people were always told to invest in property, they were doing that. And then they got fucked and their lives were destroyed, you know? So we definitely, like, that's going to leave anyone with a scarcity mindset. Like, we're a product of the Ungirth Moor, the Great Hunger, the famine, you know? Like, our population was 9 million before the famine, with the Great Hunger, but the man-made famine. But, and now we still haven't gone back there. So, like, we have experienced great loss. And when we have gotten a few quid, it, for a lot of us, it left, you know, definitely in the West and in Dublin, of course, there's more concentrations of wealth. But yeah, no, for sure.
That's 100% going to affect your ability to rest. And like you say, you don't want to play the martyr. I don't want to play the colonizer either, because like, I think that's always the tricky thing when you talk about cultures and about, it's the place where you come from. It's not what you are. Like, because I think that's the mistake that sometimes happens still, you know, when Irish people maybe view English people as always the colonizer or whatever. It's like, but who are you? Which person are you talking about per se? But on the other side of that, there is a culture that you've been reared into. And like, the country I'm from, the Netherlands, was rich since a very long time. Rich for a couple of 100 years. And I've said it to Dutch people a couple of times. You're like, Irish people have been rich once. How do you think that went? You know, of course.
Yeah.
Like, and the Dutch became very rich by being very good merchants, being, you know, very entrepreneurial, but also by selling people and doing horrible shit. So it's like, that's all there.
Yeah.
And I don't think any person necessarily needs to own that, but you need to see it as the color of your background.
Yeah.
Like I sometimes, like, I really hate discussions about privilege, how they're going these days, because that gets a bit, you know what I mean? It gets very reductive as well. But if I was going to use that language, one of my big signs of privilege is that when I came here, I was amazed at what the quality of buildings is like. You know, like we finally got the opportunity to buy a house last year. That's going to need so much work for that to be to the level that in the Netherlands would be normal. You know, just in terms of insulation and stuff like that. Like, it's definitely happening now, but it's just a whole different backdrop. And I can really imagine, that just being something that you, for instance, have inherited. Like, that's a lot, man. When so much of your country dies from starvation, that's coded in the genes. That's told in the stories. That's part of the culture.
Yeah.
And I think you see it in the way Irish people respond to world politics as well. There's strong resonances to what happened in the past and maybe hasn't completely been processed yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is something that really needs to be spoken of. And I'm often, like you, not delighted with the way it's spoken of.
Yeah.
Like, if I talk to a British person, there's a history of colonization and oppression, you know, and I'm not like, I don't want to take you to task out, you know, stuff that happened before you even born. But also, if we are going to connect as two individuals, like, your history is intrinsically linked to mine. Yeah. But the thing is, I have a very good knowledge of our shared history, and then, like, a lot of British people don't. They just, they don't learn about it, which isn't their fault. But when the opportunity does come up to learn about it, like, you know, and I don't want anyone to feel bad. And that's the people that actually did shit. You should feel terrible. But like, you know, like, again, I'm not trying to blame anyone for anything, but we have a shared history of colonized and colonizer. And, like, for us to move forward and have a relationship now, it's like, it was like if you run into your ex, like, you need to acknowledge that you went out at some point. You know, if you don't talk about it at all, it's a bit weird, you know?
Yeah, I think the where it gets really tricky is if you, for instance, would talk to an English person who's had very little opportunity in their life. Yeah. And then people go, yeah, you colonized, and they're like, yeah, when?
But that's not
when I was on the footsteps.
Exactly, because, like, the British have been, like, as horrible to low income members of their own population almost as they have to the people they colonized, like the Scottish Highlands massacres, you know, like the, you know. But I think most, and we're getting really off topic here, but, like, most progressives, like, historically would have seen that. Like, Martin Luther King said, you know, the poor white man is, you know, our brother. You know, Bernadette Devlin gave the keys to the city back to the Black Panthers because she was like, you know, the blacks and the Latinos and the oppressed and the working class are our brothers as Irish people, brothers and sisters, you know. So, no, that's, yeah, absolutely. There's more that brings us together, but yes.
And that's always, for me, the designation, whether it's helpful or not. Is it connecting, or is it creating more distance? And the way it's spoken about now, definitely in mainstream media, is just creating more conflict and distance. That's why I always, like, I listen to that Martin Luther King speech, the famous one, I Have a Dream speech. I listen to that once a year, and I always cry because it is so connecting.
Yes. When
he says about the image of the little black kids and the white kids holding hands, coming across, even saying it now, I'm nearly crying, because it's that same thing of it, us all being one. Yeah. And that's what I love. But like you say, stuff needs to be acknowledged, but not as if, and that's where it usually goes wrong, as if it's your personal
Yes,
responsibility.
exactly. Because if you're a human being talking to a human being, like you said, you want that connection.
Yeah,
And blame and judgment is not going to facilitate that.
exactly. And then national pride is the tricky one as well, because for instance, a lot of people will be down on the Brits having national pride because of the history, and but it's a shame in a way as well, because then you get like strange expressions of pride which are kind of negative, which are kind of people going, well, fuck all that and we're great or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas the Irish actually have really nice national pride, but that is because it comes from a different historical position. You would kind of feel like, and after this we will go back to the topic, but you would kind of nearly feel like, how could we all have healthy pride in our country while acknowledging the bad? Because I'm sure there's been horrors committed by Irish people. Like, you know.
Yeah, there have. But like, absolutely there have. And I think where it comes from is like, I think one of the jobs of a citizen is to ruthlessly critique their government.
Yeah.
And I think that's something Irish people do, you know? So I think we're allowed to have pride, also because we probably haven't committed as many international war crimes and horrible things as some other. But but like, you know, we have done. We all have our. Yeah. There have been massacres, and there have, like, you know, of course. But we don't. My problem with national pride is when it's used to distract people from domestic issues, or to incite people to go and fight in a war, for oil against somebody who they really have no personal problem with on the other side of the planet,
or to exclude others from society, or anything.
So it's
like
about
that.
how national pride is wielded, and I think a really good way to balance that out is to be really critical of your government. Yeah,
100%. But it's funny that's definitely something we could talk about at length as well. But I just really, to me, where this all came from, it really makes sense to me that Irish people would find it hard to relax in that way. It's just like if your history is constantly being like of being starving or being fucked over, or just like you're like, let's work hard, lads. You're like, no, can't we just to be sure, the last 5,000 times it didn't go great. So maybe like that makes sense to me, and that maybe, you know, make it a little bit harder.
Yeah, I mean, to keep it like rooted in Ireland and historically, I mean, the yin aspect of rest would have been the Sabbath, which like even farmers would adhere to. Like they get up and milk the cows, but then they'd be back into bed, you know. And then the yang aspect of it is like, if we are fucked, if there is like 100 generations of trauma behind us and probably something horrible coming down the line, have a big feed of pints and a dance, you know, like, you know, the sesh, like, and that's the yang of it as well. And you know, when people talk about so like beautiful. People talk about how good, like, Irish people are good conversationalists and we like the crack and we like humor and stuff, it's because we're all locked in a pub together out of the rain trying to stay warm, you know, with the same people for months and years on end.
100%. It is so different than, like, it's lovely sitting out in Paris on a big patio, outside terrace, whatever, but it's different energy than in a pub on a rainy night and the music is flying and the pints are flying. I do think that actually that is, I think we talked about this in the past, that if there is a suffering or a trauma and you work through some of that anyway, and there is also the pot of gold, I think we refer to it then, but kind of the chest of treasure that is also there for the getting. And I think that is one of the boons of that, is that Irish music is for me anyway, one of the best kinds of music in the world, and it's so connective.
Yeah.
So powerfully connective. That might even be a positive note to leave it on.
Well, I will just say, first of all, for anyone who's interested in Irish trad that hasn't listened, there's loads of nice stuff online, but go to a session. Like, if you can at all experience it in person, it really is a music that is not at its best in a recording studio, you know. So that is really important. And I just want to say that, like, I've been very tired this week and didn't sleep well one night, and we were booked in. No, hold on. This was last Saturday, and we were booked in to see a gig. Bronwyn Kavanagh playing in Pot Duggins. And it started for us kind of late. Like, I'm normally in bed by 10. And I didn't sleep well. And we were there in the pub, and it was taking a while to get started. And I was like actively kind of cranky, you know. And it started, and it was phenomenal. I laughed so hard. I was really moved. Bronwyn got the crowd involved. It was hilarious. It was emotional. It was moving. It was heartbreaking. And it was all just this one extraordinary person bringing a room full of people on that journey. And it reminds you that you have these hidden stores of energy. Like, because, you know, Bronwyn had us singing along, you know, and it was so funny. They were like, okay, divided the room into 3, and they were like, you guys are going to sing this line, and your line is do 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 do, and you guys, you're going to sing dan 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 dan, and you guys, you're going to sing bam. It was like this 15-second long phrase, you know, which they had to teach us in 3 parts, and it's stuck. It'll live in my head forever now. But as tired as I was, as cranky as I was, that unlocked energy, and I had a great time and slept really well after it and felt brilliant the next day.
Oh, that's beautiful. I must catch Bronwyn.
Unreal.
That really seems, I was just thinking now of, I went to a Glenn Hansard gig once, and it was lovely anyway. There's one song he does, McCormick's Wall, which is a lovely story. Sure, look it up. He tells the story. But it's just a kind of a slow, and it's really has a nice air, and it's lovely, you know. And then at the end, it just starts like a jig, and it just tore the room apart. It's just like everyone is in that soulful song, and it just and even then, because I was already this was just after our daughter Louise was born, so I was really tired and was already uplifting, but then you get the trad in, and it just opens another fucking window. And so they're definitely there's something super special to that. And I don't know if I would have discovered all the wonders that Ireland has to offer if it wasn't for the way I was lured by the music.
Yeah. Really interesting. That conversation didn't go where I thought it was going to go at all, but
I really hope that I didn't come across it. Fucking Egypt. I'm really afraid, because I was completely lost there for a bit.
Well, I could edit it out. I won't, but I could. I want you to know that. No, it's all good. And that point was actually one of my favorite ones as well, the one about underwear. But I think one thing that we talked around for a lot of the thing as well was like, screens are probably not your friend, phones are probably not your friend. I think people know this when it comes to good quality rest, but yeah, I think there's the yin and the yang of rest as well, isn't there?
Well, that's it. And they also do have their place as well.
That's
I
true.
love the accessibility of music, for instance, through them. And I find it, there's definitely a huge benefit to playing like a vinyl record through. Mm-hmm. That's a different experience. But also, I do love the fact that this morning it was actually funny. I have a new phone, and I couldn't set the pre-installed alarms are quite aggressive. And so, but it gave the option to play something off Spotify. So I just did that, but it didn't allow you to select a song, but like an album.
Right.
So it just, with the most high energy song of that album, just started, and I was like, "Fuck! Oh, there we are." But then it was a lovely song, and it kind of started the day with the laugh. So I do love that part of it. But like you say, it's all the yin and the yang of it.
It is indeed. Well, we'll leave it there. I'm going to go for a nap, and Bart's going to go for a run and a session.
This has been Weshtern Philosophy topic of rest. Follow us on social media at Weshtern Philosophy Pod. And if you want to support the podcast, you can buy us a coffee via the link episode description below. We'll be back next week with a new topic, very special guest. See you then. Slán.